This is how I built my £1 million property portfolio. I've been in the industry now for about 14 years. Initially started off as an estate agent before buying properties along the way, and ultimately now moving into that full time. It's taken a little while, but we're getting there step by step. If you're looking to grow your portfolio, here's a little insight into how I built mine. Maybe some tips in there that could help you with your own property journey. So I started off buying my first place actually with an incredibly low deposit. It was only £19,000, which I needed to get into property. Now, that sounds like a lot of money for some, but given as I was buying my first flat in London, definitely a lower barrier to entry than a lot of other places. Thankfully, it was North London, the outskirts of North London in Enfield. So the property prices at the time were fairly reasonable. We're getting on the market here. It's a 2-bedroom flat. It's an ex-council flat, so a little bit lower priced again to account for it being ex-council, but 192,000 purchase price, my first flat in London. We bought that with a 10% deposit because I bought it on a residential mortgage. It was my first place, was planning on moving out from family, going and living in there. But actually, what turned out was we bought it, went to live there, and actually decided, do you know what? This would work well as a rental, and it's not that bad living at home. Realistically, we were able to live at home rent free and therefore save a hell of a lot of money by doing so. So I decided to get consent to let on that first property. A lot of people go into property using their main residence as a way in. Some people will buy that and flip those properties on, taking advantage of sort of capital gains tax reductions or not needing to pay capital gains tax on a main residence. For me, it was converting it into consent to let, sticking with the current lender, which still meant we had slightly higher mortgage payments, but ultimately the rent covered them by a long way and was putting a few £100s a month back into my pocket. I was living at home, working as an estate agent, saving up at the same time. And that's how we're able to grow and build a deposit for the next property, which actually came a little sooner than expected. It was something that was on the market selling with a 70-year lease. And this was my first foray into short lease flats. So it had that lower lease, therefore it was struggling to sell. What we did was agree an offer with the seller and agree that they were going to extend the lease on completion. So we're getting rid of that sort of 70-year issue. We were able to buy it with just a normal buy-to-let mortgage. This one did take a little bit of help. So I had savings, as I said, some coming in from that first rental property, some coming in from the day job that I was saving over time as well. But this is also the first flat where I used investor finance. Very easy to find investor. It was someone in my family. So not too much of a hard slog, although it's still an interesting question to ask your family, explaining them what you want to do in property and seeing if they want to come along for the journey with you. So that second flat was then bought on a buy-to-let mortgage. As I said, we extended the lease, therefore had an absolute normal choice of lender of who we wanted to go with for that second property. Next, it took a little bit longer to get property 3. I think it was around about 2 years. So 2 years after the first purchase, we got that one in the middle in the meantime. So we're still doing the same thing. We're still living at home, still saving money from work and putting that towards property deposits. Now we've got incomes coming in from 2 other flats, and that worked out to around about £1,000 a month after all expenses were paid on those. So £1,000 a month profit coming in plus the savings from my day job. And we're now looking at getting into property 3. It's 2 years down the line, and that means that the mortgage on the first one, so I went for a 2-year fixed on that first residential flat. The mortgage on the first one is now coming up for renewal. So have a look at deciding to move it on to buy-to-let mortgage. Now, as I said, we bought that with a 10% deposit. Buy-to-let mortgage, you're normally wanting 25% down. So where did that 25% come from? Actually, in this case, we'd done a bit of work to the property and we bought in the right area at the right time. Over those 2 years, the property value went up significantly. So not only were we able to remortgage onto a buy-to-let, give the 25% deposit that was required there, but also managed to pull some of our money out at the same time. Still not enough to get that third property. As I said, we're in London, prices have started going up now. So that first property was 192. Like I said, the second was just over 200,000. The third one we're looking at now is over 300,000. So remortgage on the first one. We took a further advance on the second property. So that buy-to-let mortgage was still in its fixed period, but you can, depending on the lender, get a further advance to release more money out of that. If you don't know about further advances, then feel free to message me. I can talk to you about how they work and how they can help. So we've got savings. We've got a remortgage on property 1. We've got a further advance on property 2. And that allows us to then go and offer and buy property number 3. Property number 3, again, is one with a short lease. This is the start of me putting together a plan where these short lease flats are working for me. I can see how this could be a good property strategy. So property 3, that had a 47-year lease, if I remember correctly. Definitely not mortgageable at that point. So what we did here was we agreed a price with the seller. The estate agent was doing a horrible job of advertising it and putting it only to cash buyers because they didn't know how to extend a lease at the same time and how to buy a property with a short lease with a mortgage. Thankfully, I did. And therefore, I was able to construct the offer in such a way that with that one, we agreed a price just over 300,000 to buy the flat. We then agreed that we'd pay the lease extension on top of that. So the overall purchase price came to just under 350,000. That was still a fair chunk under the market value. Market value at that time was around 400. So we got a 50k discount because the seller and the estate agent didn't know how to make the most of their short lease flat and how to get the best price for them. So we bought that. That then came with a nice brand new lease. It also came with a little bit of work needed, which then gave us a chance to add more value as well. So things like replacing the windows there, upgrading the bathroom, the flooring, just simple decoration, nothing too dramatic. And it had a garden, which was another little project, but nothing too major again. So we're on 3 flats. We let that one out. Again, that was the plan, still living at home, but by this point we're getting a bit itchy feet and wanting to get out into actually our own place rather than staying living with family. So what that meant was 2 years down the line, we didn't do much for those next 2 years, but 2 years down the line, decided to move into property 3. So at that point, we're moving over from a buy-to-let mortgage to a residential mortgage. And therefore, yes, we're losing some rental income there, but it turns out it was actually quite a nice flat to live in. The value went up in the meantime, like I said, and also with a residential mortgage, again, you don't need that 25% deposit anymore. So once again, we're able to refinance and pull some funds out of that property to then go and look at the next investment. And it was around this time that sort of this, we're a few years in now, this sort of saving for deposit step by step. We had a little bit of investor help, but there wasn't any more money there. Started to drag and slow down. And also, while there'd been good capital gains initially, the property values started to slow down in the area we were investing in as well. All these 3 properties in the same area in North London, by the way. So at this point decided, okay, let's change tack. Let's sell property number 1. And let's use the additional cash that we've got there to go into flip projects. So this is the point at which we've grown a £1 million portfolio at this stage. So we had flat number 1 bought at 192,000. Eventually we sold that for around 330. So 330 from flat number 1. Flat number 2 at the same time we'd remortgaged and that value had gone up to 310. So that's 640 altogether. And then flat number 3, When we moved into it, like I said, we had to get that remortgage done onto a residential mortgage. So I had it valued at that point for the mortgage lender. And the value there was now over 400,000. So we've got a portfolio value just over £1 million, changing one of them into a residential and selling the other. But I'll talk about that in the next video, why I decided to sell the £1 million portfolio after we got there. Was it a mistake? Could I have done it differently? Maybe. But if you want to see the story on that, I'll save it for another day. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you want to see why we sold the £1 million portfolio, then subscribe to the channel, and that video will be coming soon, along with a lot more content about short leases as well. The flip projects I've gone on to do since, what I've now started in the business, specializing in short leases, and the rest of the journey from there on. So give a subscribe, give a like, and we'll see you in the next one.